Wake up, Korrii!
The tiny half-elf shouted as she launched herself on top of the sleeping figure. He groaned and shifted as he began to wake up, slowly processing the world around him.
Evie?
He mumbled and rubbed his dark eyes with a pale hand as he began to try and sit up despite the child on top of him.
Why are you here? What time is it?
The light is returning to her place in the skies, and I want eggs. Kava said that you would come with me to see the birds.
Everrii answered, shaking him as violently as she could manage, which was to say, not very. The pale man stretched and yawned, running a hand through his ice-blue hair. He blinked a couple of times, black ink-like tears forming in the corners of his dark eyes. Yellow irises began to examine the small cabin Idarrii Onslaught had once called home, ever since he had been pulled off the beach by the Alent family. They gave him a place to recover, which quickly turned into his permanent residence as they welcomed him into their family. Everrii had been his little sister, his Kadeen, for 4 years now. She barely remembered the day she found him lying face down in the sands beyond the cliffside tavern and inn that she and her parents called home. The cabin was fairly simple. It was originally going to be a guest house for the sailors, who made up a vast majority of Cliffside's patrons. Zoro Alent had shifted gears when they took in Idarrii, building it as a more permanent residence. A simple, small kitchen setup took over the left corner of the room, closest to the door. A round table with 2 chairs was set up in the right of the kitchen, presently covered in various papers, books, and maps. A desk was pushed up against the foot of his twin-sized bed, neat and tidy with the exception of a basket full of random writing utensils, paints, and bottles of ink. A closet full of the assorted belongings Idarrii had managed to collect since he had been found jutted out of the right corner of the door, with a blanket hanging over the entrance to the storage space. A small shrine to the goddess of journeys, the Lady in White, had been established next to the door with white and silver candles around a statuette of the goddess carved from white marble. On either side of the goddess rested a pair of pale white and jet black flintlock pistols, the only things Idarrii had kept since he had washed up on the shores just beyond Cliffside. Idarrii sighed. Having finally fully woken up and come to terms with where he was, he ruffled the little sister's hair and smiled lazily.
Right, eggs. Okay. Grab me my mask, let me get dressed, then we go get some eggs.
He ordered, lifting the half-elf off his lap and gently placing her on the ground before getting up and stretching again. The child raced over to the closet and started digging through the various things he kept in there. Idarrii shook his head and pulled a box out from under his bed. 10 minutes later, the pale man and the strange child emerged from the tiny cabin and out into the soft rains characteristic of an early morning on the cliffside. Idarrii's golden eyes now seemed much more normal, the inky blackness gone so long as he wore the enchanted black face mask. A gray jacket with sky blue trim hung loosely over his skeletal frame, and a simple white shirt. Puffy gray pants with ocean wave patterns along the bottom hid part of his stormy boots with blue belts. His tricolor white sky and sea feather necklace bounced with every step the 6-foot ex-sailor took. The little girl walking alongside him swung her sienna hands. The clicking and clacking of interesting rocks she found could be heard from the many yellow with pale blue flower pockets on her hot pink overalls. Dandelion rain boots with pale blue flowers splashed down into every puddle the girl could find, sometimes sending water flying as high as the brown short-sleeved shirt she wore under her overalls. A tiny golden 4-pointed star necklace hung from her neck, a gift she had received from her father after his last visit to his homeland. The two made their way up the well-worn paths and the few sets of carstone stairs until they finally made it to the wire gate of the chicken coop. Idarrii flicked the lock, allowing Evie to dart in, ruffling the feathers of the hens. The older shook his head and smiled, grabbing the chicken feed and providing breakfast to the providers of Evie's breakfast. The half-elf snatched a basket off the roof with the coop and filled it with eggs dug out of the nests.
Eggs!
She whispered to herself as her green eyes examined the blue shell of her prize.
You know we can't eat them if you don't bring them to Kova and Kava, right?
Idarrii gently nudged the rooster away from the exit as he put the feed away in the crate that protected it from the rains. A mischievous smile formed on Everrii's face before she began running back down the paths toward the taverns.
Eggs!
She shouted to the skies, presenting her treasure to the gods believed to be residing there.
Careful carrying.
Idarrii called after her, locking the chickens back into the fenced-in area around their home. He looked out to the seas, speaking to his own gods.
What am I going to do with her?
The sound of rain hitting the ground and the ocean waves crashing into the shores was his only answer. A sigh escaped his lips. His hands were shoved into his jacket pockets. Idarrii onslaught followed after Everrii.
Follow her to the end of your worlds, Navi.